Grandmother's grief at Mother's leaving was almost more than she could bear. "Don't forget us," she kept saying. That's what Mother told me. She would say,
As I stepped onto the ship, your grandmother handed me a ball of yarn, holding one end tightly in her hand. Then, as the ship slowly cleared the dock, I let the ball unwind in my hands. It seemed a tie between the present and the past. And when the yarn ran out, the long strips floated on the water long after we'd lost sight of one another.
when I do family history, it's like picking up that thread again, connecting me to the past.
Family history matters. Searching for connections. Preserving stories. Picking up the threads that tie us to the past. All these illuminate the importance of individuals, bring generations together, and help weave the fabric of humankind.
I've learned so much about life, my life. Whatever she has in her, I would hope to have in me. This song of my heart I wrote to my beloved great-grandmother, Emma Lyons Wayamau. I had returned to Kalaupapa on the island of Molokai to find my Emma. My early memory of Emma, my great-grandmother, was a picture that was in my mother's album. And she pointed to her and said, "That's my grandmother." And she went to Kalaupapa. She had leprosy. Kalaupapa was a place filled with beauty that hid such pain and loneliness. Emma had been lost to me for so long, but I knew we had this great-grandmother who had this dreaded disease. I wanted to find her, to know her. At the archives, I found the name of Emma Kaimilani Lyons. In my discovery of the records, it brought Emma to life. At 24 years of age, Emma Lyons was diagnosed with leprosy and forced to leave her family on Christmas Day, 1894. But 6 months previous to Christmas, a man by the name of John Keanu Wayamau was diagnosed with leprosy and was also sent there. They met and probably had a nice courtship, which led up to marriage. And now they've made the decision to create a family by the first pregnancy coming along. And they knew that by creating this family, they're going to have the sadness of the baby being taken away. It was a state law, anywhere from infancy to 1 year old. They were taken, because if you didn't, and the child stayed with you, surely it would contract the disease you have. She knew she had no choice. You have to sacrifice your happiness for the well-being of the child. Emma goes through the experience of childbirth and giving up a child 6 times. As I speak about it, I feel sadness in my heart. I wouldn't be able to do that. And that's why I find her so interesting, because whatever she has in her, I would hope to have in me. I searched 2 times before and never found her gravesite. But something just wasn't complete. Over 8,000 people died here. Graves were destroyed by time and elements. Then it happened. There before me were 3 Wayamau graves, 2 infant children, and then Emma. All the pain, the loneliness, the joy, all the searching and journey came together in that one moment. As a result of my having cancer, I have been able to look at what happened to Emma and how she dealt with it. How did she handle it? And I've learned so much about life, my life, through Emma's life. I so treasure the women in my life who walked before me. I could now follow Emma. I felt connected, tied together.
When my husband was in the Navy, we lived in Groton, Connecticut, and he was on a fast attack sub and was away for months at a time without any communication, no phone calls, nothing. And I was raising 3 little children all by myself, and we were 2,000 miles away from any family, and I was scared sometimes and very lonely. And I wanted to reconnect with my family and thought that doing family history would help me to do that. I'd always admired my dad. He was bigger than life and could do anything. And so I read in my grandmother's journal about his growing up, and he had polio, which was something that we didn't know, or I wasn't aware of. 24 children besides my dad in that town had polio that October. And most of them died or were left with braces on their legs for the rest of their lives, unable to walk. There wasn't much that they could do for children with polio at that time. But my grandmother could not accept that. She knew that there was more that she could do. And so she worked hard every day to help my dad. She took cocoa butter and massaged my dad's legs every single day. And then my dad says she forced him to exercise. I don't know what that was, but in bed she forced him to exercise his legs and all of his muscles. And for 7 months she did that. And then when he could get out of bed, she had him walk a little bit, and then she'd encourage him to walk a little bit more and work a little bit harder. What a blessing it must have been to see him run again. In a way, I was paralyzed because I was so lonely and homesick for my family. But when I read from my grandmother's journal and saw what she could do and what she did do for my father, I found the strength inside of me too. And I could go on, serve my little children, bring them up without my husband most of the time, and I could do better too.
I'd gone through a bit of hardship in my life and suffered from a divorce, and that's probably the most heartbreaking, discouraging thing that can happen. I was struggling. I came across a story of my great-great-grandmother who had suffered the loss of her first husband and had remarried, and her second husband had become involved with a young woman half of her age, and a child resulted from that relationship. When this child was 4 years old, he was brought to her, presented to her, because the mother couldn't take care of him anymore. She welcomed that child, loved him, raised him. He was 15 by the time she died, and he said of her, he never heard her raise her voice in anger toward anyone. When you go through a serious break of your marriage, revenge is almost always your first reaction. That is not just destructive to you, it's destructive to your children, probably potentially to your grandchildren. My great-great-grandmother's example, I think, caused me to think twice before I would maybe let go of those attitudes that would be destructive. If you think you're miserable, you think you've got a low-down, miserable day, then just go read family history. And you'll find somebody who was far worse off than you and dealt with it far better and gave you an example of how you could deal with it.
One.
看似简单，
individual.
Самотня.
Desconectado.
Ich bin nur einer.
하지만 우리 모두 하나가 될 수 있지 않나요?
Chacun faisant partie d'un grand tout.
Макар да съм един, никога не съм бил единствен.
Моето аз е част от нещо повече.
Частиною людства.
Частица семьи.
Една част от човечество, семейство и световна история.
My story.
Tu historia.
A sua história.
Jeder ein Teil unseres gemeinsamen Vermächtnisses.
Опыта преодоления неудач.
함께 단결하고 역경을 이겨내는 유산.
Истории за исцеление.
Stories of healing,
Победа и храброст.
triumph, bravery.
Спільна людська історія, яка заслуговує, щоб її пам'ятали.
Кожне окреме ім'я.
One memory at a time.
¿Por qué deberíamos ser uno?
Потому что каждый имеет значение.
Защото това е най-важно.
Because one
Uno.
하나.
makes all the difference.
在过去的100多年中，由耶稣基督后期圣徒教会赞助，前身为犹他家谱协会的 Family Search， 一直在进行收集、保存并分享世界各地族谱记录的工作。这些独一无二的记录诉说了个人、家庭和国家的故事。有系统的收集这些资料的工作始于1894年。 最初收集的大多是书籍，将记录制作成微卷的工作，则从1938年开始。到了1950年代初期，越来越需要一处永久地点来储存、保护日益增加的微卷。教会选定的地点位于犹他州盐湖城附近的山中，探勘地点的工作始于1958年。 新建工程则从1960年开始，并于1965年完工。 深凿入花岗岩山体的6个档案库有钢筋的架构，因此记录在这里可以安全地保存许多世代。这些壮观的记录库存放着240万卷微卷，包含了大约35亿个影像。数位影像的收藏持续扩大，但是这里的空间仍然绰绰有余。事实上 Family Search 正在将庞大的族谱记录收藏上传到网络上。目前储存在花岗岩山记录库的微卷上的数亿个影像，逐渐被转换成数位影像，而这个工作将费时多年才能完成。不过，转换现有的微卷记录只是这项工作的一部分。世界各地的 Family Search 员工每天都在拍摄新的数位影像。这些影像会直接储存在数位硬碟和磁带中，然后运送到花岗岩山记录库。数位媒体的平均寿命很短，所以保存数位资料的关键就在能否制作完美的备份档案。利用影印机重制的备份会逐渐失真。同样的，在制作微卷的过程中，影像的解析度也会降低。但是有了数位科技，每个备份都和原始资料一模一样。因此，虽然数位影像每隔几十年就必须重新转换成备份到新的媒体上，但是其上的影像却可以无限期保存。因为数位科技可以再造一模一样的备份影像，所以我们可以制作多份影像副本，保存在2个不同的记录库里，提供的保护比目前的微卷保存方式更好。数位科技让 Family Search 得以将收藏的宝贵族谱记录进行数位化和保存，并和大众分享。这些储藏在花岗岩库的记录，涵盖了总计超过170种语言、100多个国家、数十亿人的资料。这里储存的许多记录都是无可取代甚至独一无二的资料。这座巍峨坚实的花岗岩山，象征了 Family Search 致力保存和分享这世上记录的决心。
多惡嘅家譜樹將你直接聯繫到現有嘅世系表，幾百萬項記錄同埋幾十億個名字。但有陣時，你嘅家譜樹會一片空白，因為 Family Search 冇資料將你同你嘅祖先連埋一齊。為咗保護私隱 ，Family Search 唔會顯示在世者嘅記錄。所以，如果你嘅世系表係空白嘅，你只需要將自己同已逝祖先搭條橋連接起嚟 ，Family Search 就會自動填補剩餘嘅部分。要點樣建立呢座橋呢？方法就係喺你同你已逝祖先之間填入在世者嘅名字。睇下荷利湖白嘅呢個虛構嘅例子。荷利嘅父母都仲在生，佢爸爸嘅爸爸即係爺爺都仲在生，但係佢嘅曾祖父已經過世。開始嘅時候，荷利第一個要加入世系表嘅人就係佢嘅爸爸。佢撳一下加入丈夫，喺出現嘅快顯示窗，佢選擇加入個人頁籤，因為佢加入嘅在世者喺 Family Search 度冇記錄。跟住佢填入爸爸嘅名字同資料，然後撳繼續。基本上佢啱啱建立咗自己爸爸嘅個人記錄，亦完成咗搭橋嘅第一步。跟住佢去到佢嘅爺爺，佢再撳加入個人，輸入佢爺爺嘅資料。佢唔知道佢爺爺嘅出生日期同埋地點，所以佢將嗰啲資料留返以後再填。佢再為自己嘅世系表建立一筆獨一無二嘅記錄。由於佢嘅爺爺仲在生，所以 Family Search 唔會顯示正式嘅記錄。跟住就係佢已經過世嘅曾祖父。呢節佢唔打算建立記錄，而係要將世系表同 Family Search 現有嘅記錄連結。然後佢再撳加入丈夫。呢節佢揀尋找個人頁籤，而唔係加入個人，因為佢要連結到 Family Search 現有嘅記錄。佢輸入祖先嘅名字索騰胡伯，再輸入一兩項資料，幫助 Family Search 揾到正確嘅索騰胡伯。然後佢撳搜尋 ，Family Search 搜尋現有嘅世系表，將包括佢祖先名字嘅部分顯示出嚟。荷利檢查搜尋結果，揾到佢嘅祖先，然後撳選取。而家荷利嘅曾祖父加入咗佢嘅家譜樹，因為系統入面已經有呢位曾祖父嘅記錄，所以高曾祖父母同埋其他可以喺 Family Search 世系表中追溯嘅祖先都已經加入去荷利嘅家譜樹。 和你為佢已過世嘅每位祖父母同曾祖父母重複呢啲步驟，直到家譜樹喺每個譜系都同 Family Search 嘅記錄相連。你可以用同樣嘅方法填寫你嘅世系表，只要記住呢啲重要嘅要訣。揀加入個人頁籤嚟加入在世者嘅名字，揀尋找個人頁籤，將你嘅世系表同已逝祖先連結起嚟。咁樣做，你就會喺同你已逝祖先之間搭起一座橋，你個人嘅家譜樹就會日益茁壯。祝你好運！揾出祖先嘅名字，提交名字去聖殿，然後教其他人咁做。